Welcome to the ChargePoint podcast, brought to you by FlexiCharge, your gateway to the future of EV charging. In each episode, we dive deep into the world of EV infrastructure, offering insights and perspectives from industry leaders, innovators, and the people at the forefront of deploying charging solutions and networks. Join us to explore the exciting developments that are accelerating our world towards sustainable mobility.
Welcome to episode 11 of the ChargePoint podcast. I'm Christoph from FlexiCharge. In this episode, we are revisiting a powerful conversation from our recent virtual panel where we tackled one of the most pressing challenges in the EV charging landscape, grid congestions. The Netherlands is at the forefront of this issue with its high density of EV chargers now facing limitations due to grid capacity constraints. Joining me for this deep dive are the following experts: Peter Hermans, a renowned consultant in power transmission and former CTO of Stedin, shares his experience addressing congestion management. Sjors Gerardits from incl, who brings insights into how energy storage solutions are helping overcome those bottlenecks. Bart de Groot, Senior Product Manager at Fedora, who will discuss the hurdles and opportunities in scaling high-power EV charging infrastructure. And finally, Robert Brame, co-founder and CTO of FlexiCharge, who would explain how smart energy management solutions can help navigate grid limitations while enabling efficient charging. We will explore critical topics like the evolving role of DSOs and TSOs in this new energy landscape, innovative solutions for managing grid capacity, and what the future holds for EV charging infrastructure in this mature market at the very forefront of the European EV revolution. If you're part of the EV charging world or simply interested in the energy transition, this is a discussion you don't want to miss. Let's dive into episode 11 of the ChargePoint podcast.
Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to this exciting virtual panel. My name is Christophe Lefilibert, and I'm part of FlexiCharge, and I have the pleasure today to moderate the panel. Having no grid capacity on high and medium voltage electricity networks seems to be the new normal in the Netherlands. Grids across the world have become bottlenecks, slowing the advancement of renewables, but the Netherlands seems to have been hit by the problem particularly early and hard. The Dutch story showcases how grids can become a bottleneck for the expansion of renewables and electrification in any country with such ambitions. And you might know the density of EV chargers per inhabitant in the Netherlands is the highest in Europe, which is a rapid rollout, which is maybe now jeopardized or at least slowed down by the serious grid congestion concern. So how do EV charging professionals cope with such challenges as they deploy high-power charging hubs, a type of hubs which is very much requested by the market? So today we have the pleasure to welcome a range of specialists. We will start with presenting you, Peter. Welcome, Peter Hermans, a leading expert and consultant within power transmission and specialist of the Dutch grid. You are a former CTO of Stedin, which is a major DSO, which manages and maintains energy grids in most of South Holland, Utrecht, and Zeeland. Welcome to the panel. And welcome to you, Sjors, replacing your colleague, Steven, the last minute. Great, thank you. You can make it happen. You are a seasoned professional from the renewable energy industry, holding a master in energy science, and today business developer at incl, which is, for those who don't know incl yet, one of the leading suppliers of energy storage technology in the Netherlands and across Europe. And we have also the pleasure to receive you, Bart de Groot, Senior Product Manager at Fedora, one of the leading companies deploying EV charging infrastructures across the Netherlands. Warm welcome to you. And last but not least, our very own Robert Brame, co-founder and CTO of FlexiCharge, and above all, energy management specialist. So a word to the participants. Thank you for joining us. You can post questions in the top right corner. There is a field for questions, and we will pick them up later by revealing them on the screen so everybody can see them. And there's also a chat section, but we won't pick up questions in the chat section. So if you really want to ask a question, put it in the questions. So without further ado, let's dive into today's exciting discussion, starting with you, Peter. So between 15 and 20, you were CTO of Stedin. Can you please take us back to the most significant events and challenges and projects that you were involved in relation to the Dutch grid? So what has been happening? What did you see and what have you been working on? The word is yours, please.
Yeah, thank you, Christopher. Happy to do so. For everybody who doesn't know me, I worked for 13 years between 2007 and 2020 in the energy sector, from 2010 to 2020 for the Dutch TSO Stedin. In 2020, I retired, but I remained active on the issue of the energy transition on national and European level. Actually, the energy transition in which I got involved started really in the beginning of 2012, 2013 on smart metering. And between the period from then to 2020, I was involved in a number of Dutch projects which relates to the energy transition, but also to digitalization and to exchange of data to the market. In the Netherlands, there was a market facilitating board of the system operators, which was the secretary to run that. Then on European level, there was the task force flexibility from the task force grids from EG3, working on flexibility from the European Commission. I worked on the active system management report of the DSOs. I come back to that later. And then after we write those nice reports on European level, I really got engaged or initiated in the Netherlands a project on addressing congestion management, which then turned out into the delivery of the COPAX platform, a joint platform of the TSOs and the DSOs in the Netherlands, which came live in 2019. Then after my retirement, I also worked on data exchange, because data exchange goes further than just data exchanges between grid operators and suppliers and metering companies, because in the energy transition, energy data is relevant for much more sectors. For example, in this case, the mobility sector as well. So we set up an energy data space, which is called in Europe today, called MFF bus. I'll come to that also later. And then after 2020, I also was involved in smart meter data, using for grid management purposes to get a much more better view of what is going on there. And then we really had to deal with the GDPR and all type of privacy aspects. And the last point which I was involved after my retirement was working with local energy communities, because I really believe in the concept of local for local, and that we're really heading to a complete other energy system. So the insights from that was that, at least I think we are on the way of a completely different energy system of the future than today. In the Netherlands, we call that we are transforming from the world of A to the world of B. And a lot of discussions we have that people think, well, we're changing something in the world of A, while other people say, well, let's first define the world of B and then figure out what the first step should be to go into that direction. A world in which I think the last mile, as we refer it, the low voltage grid, will become the first mile. A situation where we see that the grid originally designed for traditional one-way direction of energy flows and not fitted for two-directional energy flows, especially for heat pumps and EV charging. And you also see changes on system management and grid management, because I talk about grids, and we have a number of grids, the distribution grids and the transmission grids. But at the end, we have one system, and we should ensure that we don't end up with a situation with 7 captains managing one ship, etc. So that really requires good cooperation between DSOs and DSOs. So that is where I was involved so far. So if you, Christopher, asked me to zoom in a little bit on the congestion management topic in the Netherlands. So first of all, my view on the root cause. Why are we there where we are there today? And then my personal view is that there was a strong incentive for renewable energy generation, subsidies on solar panels, netting schemes, etc. Because the government really pushed for DER to increase, and that effect overlooked system effects, because then you saw that a lot of renewable energy generation came online in areas where the ground is very cheap. And where the ground is very cheap, there is not so many people living there. And where not so many people are living there is no grid capacity. The second point is that the regulator today, I think as in most European countries, is setting the tariffs for the grid operators steered on efficiency, which is not an incentive to invest up front. So actually, grid operators were a little bit late to sound the alarm bell. Now, where are we now today? Maybe Christoph, you can show the first slide I showed you. This is the situation in the Netherlands on the moment. The grid operators show the two maps you see here on the left on load and feed in, and you see significant areas of the Netherlands showing to red. Now the question is, what is shown here, and that is currently a big discussion. Because there's a difference between physical congestion and grid capacity shortage. These pictures show grid capacity shortage. That means that the available grid capacity which is there is less than the grid capacity, transport capacity, which is requested for. And this situation will worsen until 2030. We are not at the peak of the problem yet, so the problem will become stronger, and especially in the provinces Flevoland, Utrecht, and Gelderland, the situation might even become a little bit critical after 2025, also hitting the residential markets. If in those areas, for example, in Utrecht, you see that the number of enterprises which request transport in July, they mounted up to more than 1,300. There was more than 1 gigawatt of power request, and for feed-in more than 500, requiring more than 200 megawatt feed-in. Now the problem with the grid operators is that they lack staff, they lack time, because the targets for the government are set for 2013 based on the European climate agreements, and they lack finance, because also this is a very heavily investing thing, and finance is also an issue there. So that is where we are now. Then what you see is that the grid operators start to work with TenneT. TenneT is a TSO. A TSO is really so far the system operator. So they run the system, and the grid operators, the distribution network operators in the past, they provide the transport for the distribution. And you see now with the changing dynamics in the system, where the energy starts to flow in from the bottom side of the pyramid, that also the grid operators need to evolve capabilities on system operations. So they need to develop capabilities to do predictive load flow analysis. In the past, it was that the TSO said, well, for the day ahead forecast, we do a forecast, and the grid operators only have to confirm that there is capacity enough on the coupling point between the distribution grid and the transmission grid. And then the TSO said, that's fine, because the distribution grid is your stuff. We are not involved in that. And the investment strategy there was a copper plate investment strategy. So there's always sufficient capacity. So why should we go for such detailed forecasting? Now, that is a need for today, that they, on a daily basis, per 15 minutes, also know where the problem will be there. And for how long the problem will be there, and how big the problem there. And that is what I call the predictive load flow analysis capability. And if the DSOs have that capability on board, then they are able to much more better to communicate to the market where the problem is, but also when the problem is. And you see the second slide here is the left one is the static one on transport capacity. But, the physical congestion is not 24 hours a day a case. It's only in certain times of the day. And I make the comparison with the weather radar animatics. So the market should know when and where a problem is, and then the flexibility could be offered much more better. That's my first thing. Then, Christopher, you asked what are the plans? So what is going on today?
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of things going on, and I reference to the gridlock report. Christopher might send that around later on. The grid operators are doing utmost to improve the situation. They invest more than 8 billion euros per year. On one hand, that sounds good. On the other hand, if you continue that for more than 25 years, you end up with an amount of more than 200 billion euros. And then the question is, who's going to pay? Who's going to pay that? So you see now the discussion about affordability, and I think the general feeling in the Netherlands is that only putting more copper in the ground will not lead to affordability. So that we really need smart solutions next to just building the infrastructure. Of course, accelerating the process, especially accelerating in the permitting process and the build process. TSO, some say, as a project which lasts 10 years, where 8 years pass by getting the permit and the national procedures and all the consultation rounds, and only 2 year the build process. So that is a process in which also the government, the regional processes, the municipalities are strongly involved in. Now, in the meantime, for the enterprises who are on the waiting list, the grid operators have also some new products or services in the portfolio now, and actually we are in a process where at the end a firm transport contract will be a very scarce thing there. Actually, we're moving fast towards non-firm transport contract. So what the grid operator will say, well, for areas where they see, well, here is congestion, they do an investigation and they do a report, and the regulator checks that report. Then they announce, after 6 months of certain periods when the report is published, they announce that area as a formal congested area. And then everybody in the market is requested voluntarily to submit redispatch bids. Now, those redispatch are requested by the GoPax platform. It's a national platform in which all the DSOs and the TSOs participate. And participants, aggregators or enterprises or BRPs, everybody can submit their bid for reducing load in a certain area, and it is combined with a compensation bid in another area to make sure that the balance is remained. That's the first thing. Then the second project is that the grid operators sign contracts with enterprises with limited or restricted transport contracts, so that they say, well, you get a transport contract, but the profile on how you use the contract is limited and agreed upon that. Then there are actions on use it or lose it. There's a lot of discussion on that. Some companies have a lot of transport contracts contracted in the past, but they don't use it. So there is a discussion. If you don't use it, then you lose it, because then we can give it to somebody else. N-1 line protection, in some cases by the TSO, is left. Dynamic line rating, so that the capacity on the TSO grid might vary and might be increased due to the weather conditions. And in delivering transport contracts today, there is also stepped away from what we called in the past first come, first serve. You request for transport, then you're on the waiting list, and you're number one, then you're served, and if you're number 100, you have to wait. Now there is a priority scheme agreed by the regulator. They said, well, certain requests may be prioritized. So I always say a hospital gets more priority than a casino. So it's the public and vital infrastructure assets which get more priority. And also there is an issue on buildings. We need to build much more buildings in the Netherlands as we have today. Also, that is hammered because then you build buildings and houses, but there's no electricity, nobody can live in that. So also that is prioritized. Then enterprises themselves also take now the action. So this not only, and that's important, it's not only the action by the system operators, but actually the whole society should act on that. So where enterprises are sitting geographically together in an industrial area, they create what we call energy hubs. And actually the initial step of an energy hub is, can we see and can we share our transport contracts? Because if every company has its own profile, and one company has the peak in the morning and the other one in the afternoon and the third one in the evening, you could share the transport contracts. And the grid operators are piloting and working together with areas to test that and to pilot that. But that requires that the companies on an industrial area work together, and also in a legal entity sit together, because the liability is to them all, and the grid operators have to have a good confidence in what they offer, that is workable. So that is what energy companies of energy hubs are doing, creating group contracts. And on the moment that within such a contract there is also local generation, because there is solar roofs or windmills on there, then you come also in the next step, that it's not sharing transport contracts, transport capacity, but it's also sharing the electricity. And then you start to share electricity, local for local, use locally what you generate locally, and only the deficit, and so you exchange with the market. In that last area also, the energy communities in the Netherlands are active. We have more than 700 energy communities in the Netherlands, and they're also now piloting and starting to work on the local concept. The regulator is active. They monitor what's going on, and they're looking into a new tariff structure. Today we have, for the residential market, a flat fee tariff structure, and they're really considering to bring in time and volume in there. And I'm also pushing a little bit what is happening in Austria, because they also bring the locational perimeter into the tariff structure. So if you use local energy, you use less grid, then the grid cost might be a little bit cheaper. And for public charging, the issue will be on the permitting process for municipality, and they're pushing that municipality. If you put a charging pole, a public charging pole there, you will need to have a permit for that. That the charging poles are all smart charging and what they call net aware charging, so that the charging poles help to mitigate the congestion, and that it's not only working for the balancing market or for the intraday market when the electricity is cheap, that everybody starts to load their cars. So that is where we are today. My last 2 points are some emphasis, and then the perspective, I think, for charging point operators. My personal view is that more emphasis needs to be required on the communication part from the system operators. That much more shown is where is the physical congestion actually on what moment. I like the weather radar animations which I showed you. Then the relation between electrical and thermal load. We say the grid is 100% loaded because that is what we electrical measure. But actually the thermal load is how far can you load the grid before the cables burn down and the transformers explode. And that relation is not very clear and is different in many European countries. And I know that there is a lot of university studies going on to see whether we can increase the electricity load to a level that we still have a level of security of supply, because the thermal load is not going over the borders. Local balancing need absolutely to be more emphasized. I see the discussion on congestion separated in congestion on load and congestion on feed-in, while I would advise also to correlate those two type of congestion, because that brings you to new type of solutions. Then in the local grid, you saw that in one of the pictures, we have also voltage problems. If the feed-in from solar panels from consumers, in the right picture, the solar panels from consumers start to feed in the grid more than the grid is capable to handle, then the power voltage goes up. And on the moment the voltage goes over 253 volts, then the smart inverters just switch off. I show this because that could be also for CPOs relevant. If you say, well, where will I start to do some business, and if you would start to do adding load to the grid in those areas, and loading cars on the moment when the sun is very hard shining, then you could help mitigating the grid congestions. The relation to heat, there is no strong relation yet to heat. The discussion on heat, as we phase out gas and electricity, is still very weak. And there are some DSO governance issues, because also how do you manage this whole thing? Now, to conclude, my perspective for CPOs would be identify your business case when you are in the market or come in the market. Then you have two options, via the market and work with BSPs or CSPs and BRPs on the GoPax platform. Then you are in the redispatch type of business, or you make directly non-firm connection agreements or limited connection agreements with the DSOs. Well, I said again, push the DSOs to be more transparent on when is what capacity available, and also consider solar carports in cooperation with municipalities and energy communities in the congested area. Then together with the energy hubs, it could be interesting. There is an initiative. I think there's more than a few thousand energy hubs in the Netherlands identified. If you would find out where the energy hubs are, because that is where the industry is sitting, then you might see that there are also trucks which would charge. And if you figure out which of these energy hubs also have generation capability, then that would also be a good match to work together with. So in baseline, that would be my perspective.
Excellent, very thorough. Thank you very much, Peter. It's a complex market. I'm at least highlighting that you said that we haven't seen the peak of the problem. That's quite worrying, and hopefully challenges, griefs, opportunities, and solutions. So that's the topic now. So I think we can come back. We'll probably ask questions later on. I'd like to then hear. So on this backdrop, very detailed. So if we move to the deployment of charging station, maybe let's move on with you, Bart. So can you tell us a little bit about Fudura's activities, type of projects, charging hubs, and what kind of challenges you're facing? So tell us a bit.
First of all, thank you, Christophe, for giving me the opportunity to be an expert. I joined the energy sector and the EV market exactly 12 months ago. So honored to be invited here. So maybe first some background on Fudura. We used to be part of Enexis, the grid operator, and there we were responsible for B2B markets, so certified metering services and medium voltage infra. Then in 2022, we were acquired by Div Capital and PGGM. And we have now, developed additional capabilities on EV, PV, battery, power quality, like capacitor banks, harmonic filters. What we do, we really focus on the entire energy system of a company, of a customer, and with our main play in the market being operational lease of capital-intensive assets. So we engineer the solution, we manage the implementation, and then we use our nationwide coverage of service engineers to basically serve our customers. What are the main challenges I see that our customers are facing? First of all, it's a relatively high upfront investment. What I see in the EV market is that we often first speak to, let's say, the innovation manager of a company, or like if it's a small company, like the techiest guy in the company, and then from their side, there's often like big eagerness to move forward very quickly in implementing and closing contracts, but they also have to convince their manager or their director. So that really means that we had to make a shift from, let's say, more transactional selling, like someone gets an upgrade on their grid connection and then we sell them a transformer, to establishing a partnership. So we really help our customers to build a business case and to basically help them to also convince their management. And these can be like logistics companies comparing TCO of fossil versus electric. It can also be like more B2C focused CPO and gas companies, where we basically look at expected revenue versus investment. But also what we see more and more often is, let's say, on business parks, there may be one or two companies that actually have spare capacity, and they want to use that to deliver fast charging to their neighbors that might be logistics companies. So what we currently see is that most of our customers still want to buy their infra. Many of the first movers have quite heavy innovation budgets. And if we are talking to smaller customers, they often start with like one charger just to test one e-truck. But on the other end, like I was speaking to a major truck sales company last week, and they told me that 90% of their trucks are leased either operationally from them or like financially from like the various banks in the Netherlands. So we do expect that in the future, if once the footprint of e-trucks grows, that also, let's say, the energy infrastructure will be more and more financial or operational lease. Yeah, and then like the biggest challenge, of course, that we see with our customers now is net congestion, and that basically affects all of the above because your business case changes, timelines change. And we really see examples of like customers that have ordered an e-truck, and then last minute they find out, oh yeah, I need charging infrastructure. They call the grid operator. Can I get an upgrade? No. Oh shit. What do we do now? So then basically they contact us, and then we use our, let's say, solution engineering expertise to calculate for them, like how big does your battery need to be? How many charges do you need? And basically, like, what does your business case look like? And like for charging infra, like adding a battery actually changes the business case quite significantly. It can make it like easily 2 or 3 times as expensive. On the other hand, like we also have like, let's say, more simple use cases. So a customer might have placed like 10 AC chargers a few years ago, but like in the first few years they were like very sparsely utilized, but like with the growing usage of EVs, utilization goes up, and then like the letters from the grid operators drop, and then they asked us like, please, can you just do some dynamic balancing on our main meter, and then we just implement a relatively simple EMS solution. Like from a product or technical point of view, I would say like the main challenge for us as a company is to just get everything working, plug and play out of the box. And like interop is so important. And you see that in the, let's say, the EV DC market, like through institutes like ELA, there has been a lot of standardization. You have OCPP, but in the battery market, like these standards are still not uniform. So a lot of different battery manufacturers use slightly different standards. But on the other hand, like that also provides like an opportunity, I would say, to parties like FlexiCharge, who are basically, I would say, committed to removing a lot of that complexity, and basically offer a plug and play solution for companies like Fudura. Or if it's not plug and play, like you would work with us and basically make sure that it works. Maybe a last one to briefly touch on what we see with a lot of our customers who are in DC charging and they need battery is the choice between like integrated battery chargers, or let's say using a standalone battery and standalone DC chargers. We offer both options, but so far we've seen that most customers actually opt for the standalone stationary battery, because it's not yet possible to share battery capacity between multiple, let's say, integrated chargers. And then you will see that one charger is always used and the other one is not. And then actually you have some battery capacity on another charger, but that one is not being used. And also in the future, it would, like, if we use like a separate battery, we could always, like, once the grid connection comes in, we could always like swap it out and replace it with a transformer once it becomes available.
Exactly. And maybe moving on to the next slide. Yeah, thanks for this presentation and input, Bart. Yeah. Maybe before moving on, there was a quick question from you, Peter. You want to ask it yourself?
Hearing what you tell is, I see when we talk about energy hubs, There's a need for what they call the park manager, who manages the joint contract on behalf of all the participants on the industrial area towards the grid operator. Is Fedura planning or doing already themselves to position themselves in a park manager role towards the grid operators?
Yeah, so like we have several partner managers actually focusing on this. So in like our former head office was in Zwolle, so there on a business park we are. I forgot the name now, but yeah, like we are working together like with these business parks and taking let's say a leading role in basically bringing everyone together, doing the negotiations, etc., and providing the metering, sub-metering, everything required to make it work.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting specialty of the Dutch market. So batteries. Let's come back to batteries. Let's dive deeper. Now we talked about the business case. So I hope that you, Shores, can enlighten a little bit and give us some real deep perspective on this. So tell us a bit about. So when did IWell start to install battery storage connected to the grid? When did you start work with CPO and charging? Give us a bit of your history and tell us a bit how you're working.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks as well for inviting us to give some perspective on the battery side and the Dutch market. IWell started about 8 years ago, placing batteries behind the meter of our clients, and it's always business to business that we focus on. And the first couple of years, the main focus has been peak shaving batteries. So there were some locations where you could install a battery and you could provide short power spikes, for instance, in apartment buildings to provide power to the elevators, which only come in every once in a while, and thereby lowering the grid connection in such a way that you actually could lessen the bill of the DSO. And that started with 10 kilowatt batteries. It improved a bit to 30 kilowatt batteries, and then up until 3.5 years ago, we really saw a big spike in the size of the batteries and also the challenges that our clients are facing. So we moved up a big step, and we went into the megawatt size. So we installed our first battery of 1 megawatt. Then it had 1 megawatt hour, so it was a 1C battery at a distribution center. And there directly we also had to do a coupling with DC chargers, because there were DC chargers installed there. There was a lot of solar installed at the location. And next to our batteries solution, we also have energy management software that can couple to all these flexible assets. So we started connecting to DC chargers for the first time, and we wanted to limit their available power to the chargers at certain points because of grid limitations. And grid limitations are a big challenge for a lot of clients. For IWell, it's actually a bit of it's been an enabler of our growth, since the fact that our clients are facing these grid limitations sometimes pushes them towards battery solutions, since they don't have any other option available. And this means that, for instance, transport companies, they have traditionally only had a quite small grid connection and could easily run their entire operation. All of a sudden, once they start moving into electric charging, they need to go tenfold increase perhaps on their power consumption. So then they call the grid operator. Of course, there's no available capacity, and they run into an issue. And that's where we come in. And do we collaborate then with the CPO? Well, these bigger transport companies, they usually take on the CPO role themselves. They are, of course, supported by backend providers. But we install battery on site. And when you're talking about a business case, is it good? Well, the investment costs, of course, go up, like Bart said, but also your potential profit or income can increase greatly. You have the opportunity to charge locally produced PV energy at the very cheap, sometimes negative priced moments. And if there's a good mismatch or a big mismatch between the moment of production of PV and the moment of charging of your EVs, you can actually utilize the battery to make a big value step in the kilowatt hours that you're storing during the day, you're discharging during the night towards your EVs. The Netherlands has a bit of a subsidy type of scheme in which locally produced kilowatt hours, if you use them to charge your own EVs, you get something called a renewable fuel unit, which can also stack on top of your revenue model. So in such a way, you can get a very good business case if the circumstances are right. You can easily have a payback period under 5 years, sometimes under 4 years. Of course, battery prices dropping quite a lot as well. But in a lot of instances, the payback period really isn't that much of a factor, because the battery just becomes an enabling technology to switch towards electric charging. Without the battery, maybe a company can charge 1 or 2 trucks overnight, but once they start moving into higher numbers, there just isn't enough power to go around. So they need to install the battery because they cannot get more capacity from the grid. And where Bart just mentioned, well, the battery can be installed for a couple of years, and maybe the bigger grid connection becomes available, and we can replace it by a transformer. That's one way of looking at it. Sometimes we also can look at it once a bigger grid connection becomes available, you can start utilizing your battery for energy trading behind the meter. So instead of having a technical asset that's actually providing peak power, you now have a financial asset that you can monetize on all the energy markets that are available, and you can start making money from your investment as well. So we're always looking at this combination of these local services and trying to maximize also energy trading value from that. And then CPOs, we also work with CPOs that do public charging. We're starting to do that more and more, in which they are moving towards DC charging stations on limited grid connections. And then we install batteries that are able to, of course, provide this peak power for short instances. And then when there's no charging, we start no EVs coupled. We start refilling the battery either from PV if there's a solar carport, for instance, or from the grid if there's still a bit of room in a grid connection at that point. So in all these different flavors, we work with EV charging infrastructure, we work with CPOs, and one of the challenges that we see from our EMS point of view, from energy management software, is there's a very big diversity in different brands of chargers, different type of chargers, different capabilities of chargers. Can we connect to them? Is there a Modbus interface? Is there an MPPT interface? Is there something available to which we can actually send set points for a charger to follow or not? It's a very diverse field. That's one of the things we also talk to FlexiCharge about. Of course, they can enable this step for us. So we can connect to FlexiCharge and they can connect to all the different brands and types. And we can give a full service without having to do all the development for each single asset ourselves, which of course comes down to a lot of hours of our developers, but also keeping it all up to date. If there's a firmware update, functionality might be different. So that's a big challenge for us at the moment. And I think some of the service that FlexiCharge offers, it's very beneficial for us as well.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Sjors, for the...
Maybe one thing, Christoph, I think there was a question here, how do we optimize the size of the batteries needs for a given project?
Oh, yes, it would be nice to hear your thoughts. Yeah, how do you approach that?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of metrics that go into that evaluation. I say the grid connection is always one of the starting points. What is your current grid connection and what is your current energy profile? And what do you want to add in the future? So what's your growth path of EVs coming in? How much are they going to consume? When do they arrive at your hub? When you're going to leave? How much kilowatt hours do you need to receive in that period? Do you have a PV roof? How much does it produce? Can you expand it? All this goes into our variables that we use. And then we can look at just the purely local optimization. So how big can your battery be that it can be charged most of the days, that it will be discharged most of the night, so you have a full cycle each day, so it's not oversized or undersized. And then the one step that we always take as well, can we perhaps oversize the system in such a way that you can still utilize it for local optimization, but part of the system is also available at times for energy trading. And in such a way, maybe you increase your investment right now a little bit, but your payback period might be more interesting. And There's, of course, different companies that are a bit more risk averse, or they like to take risks. So because there's no guarantees for the future in these energy markets, and they want to either go for a big investment and take a bit of risk on that with a high upside, or they want to decrease the risk and go for a more sure investment, and you go for a more local, let's say, optimized system. So we offer both always to a client, and they have the final say, of course.
Makes sense, absolutely, yeah. Great. So yeah, well, so I think we'll come back to Peter. You have a question now you want to ask? Yeah, Peter, please go ahead.
Yeah, one question to George. When you talked about the business case, how strong is the business case dependent on revenue which is coming out of the balancing market? Because what you see in the Netherlands, that grid operator said, we connect you, but we do not allow you to participate in the balancing market because you might deteriorate the situation around congestion.
Right. So a business case can be perfectly good, very healthy without the balancing market income, as long as there's a local production. So if you have a solar roof, if there's indeed overnight charging, and if your grid connection allows for a bit of charging, discharging, and needed to fill up your battery. So we then have an optimization algorithm running to determine the best moments to charge your battery. Well, if it's a sunny day, of course, it's between 12 and 2, or more or less, it's a given. And when to discharge your battery. So we have a forecasting of your EV charging, and we also take into account, for instance, the Apex day ahead prices, and based on that, we make a discharging profile which is optimized. And with the current Apex deltas that we see in the Netherlands, which have been increasing lately again. Combined with the, let's say, the local consumption of energy of PV, which gives you renewable fuel units, and also you don't have to pay energy taxes because you're not taking energy from the grid. That if you have a good combination there, also then you can have a business case with a payback period under 5 years without any balancing market income.
Okay, clear.
Thank you. Yeah, Robert.
Before you come to me, I have a question to Peter about the, you mentioned FCR, so frequency curtailment reserve markets for batteries. Can you elaborate a bit on that? Why you are not allowing batteries to participate in that in the Netherlands? Because that's a bit special.
Yeah, there's a discussion between the TSOs and the DSOs. The DSO says, well, we need to manage that the load is not going beyond the capacity of the grid. And that is for the DSO on their grids, and that is, by the way, also for the TSO on their whole voltage grids. But on the other hand, the TSO has a second task, is balancing the system. So at sometimes they might say, hey, we need more feed in, or we need more load to balance the system. And if they would request an asset to generate more feed in to keep the balance upright, that might deteriorate the situation on congestion. So that is the discussion which has been held between DSOs and TSOs, that every battery may work also in the balancing market, except for those situations where it creates a deterioration on the congestion, and that is limited in the contracts when you connect to a DSO grid.
Right, but the thing is, if you are placing a battery behind an existing connection, and you're staying within the boundaries of the existing connection. Right now, I don't think there's much of a limitation by the DSO. Of course, they don't. If you want to get a new connection, or if you want to expand your connection, then there might be some regulations. You do have to sign up your battery with the DSO as well, so they know what batteries are placed there, and there's new regulations coming in which the DSO also get more control over your flexible assets. Yeah. So you can have an interface in which they can actually limit your power output or your power at moment of critical times.
That is not completely true, because if it's a battery on an existing connection, if the area is becoming congestion, then the first phase is what the grid operator will say, I need voluntarily that people bid into the market for redispatch or for flexibility to reduce. But if that volume is too less, then it becomes a mandatory business. And then also the grid operator can request, actually that is in the latest Dutch grid code, which was actually published last week on that the grid operators can interfere also on existing situations.
It will make
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it will make for also an income stream for the batteries, then to use the battery in the local grid management situation. That's actually beneficial. It can be beneficial as well.
One more thing to add here. You mentioned earlier, Peter, the demand response. So that is mandatory, or that is also on a sort of optional? I mean,
it is a phased approach. So when the grid operators expect congestion in a certain area, then they start an inquiry or a research. In that area, already everybody is voluntarily invited to offer flexibility.
Yeah.
Via redispatch or via restricted transport contract, and if that's fine, then it's fine. But if that is not sufficient, or when the prices for those voluntary bids are extremely high, then there is some kind of a financial border. Then the grid operator is allowed to declare the next phase, and then you enter in the mandatory situation.
That's interesting.
There's a very nice Dutch picture on that where you see what these phases are.
Good. So, Robert, we've been listening now for almost 50 minutes, painting this picture of the Dutch market. You've been actively visiting the last 12 months. How does that, align with your picture, and how do you see some of the opportunities and solutions moving forward?
Yes, I have been visiting the Netherlands quite frequently. The last 12 months, almost every month, I have been there for visiting customers, but also some exhibitions and conferences. And I mean, under the bottom line, what you can hear is basically it's one of the main challenges. I mean, we can talk about load management, we can talk about energy management, and these things are not new. I've been working at university for 15 years before we started FlexiCharge, and all these, energy management, these algorithms, integrating batteries, microgrids, local energy usage, and so on and so forth. That's, I mean, from algorithm or system perspective, that's pretty clear, and that's not the challenge. What the challenge is, and I think everybody here mentioned it, is this interoperability of systems and intercommunication of systems. So integration of different EV chargers, different types of EV chargers, different manufacturers, different even interpretation of a common communication protocol in EV charging, which is OCPP, integration of power meters of different solar inverters by Modbus, by MQTT, by different protocols, integration of batteries, and then finally also the integration into systems from the DSO for demand response. That's a big challenge, and for that you need technology to do that, and that's what we're actually doing with FlexiCharge. So there's a backbone layer in our system which can integrate and provide a brokerage between different system components, and an overlay which provides then load and energy management, including all these things which have been mentioning here: load balancing, battery integration, peak shaving, load shifting, and so on and so forth. And that's what we're doing at FlexiCharge. And the beauty, I mean, I know the situation is bad and it's a big challenge for the Netherlands, but I think it is also a great study case for what we are going to see in other European countries in the future. So therefore, it's great to grow with the challenges in the Netherlands and be able to work together with our customers on solutions how to overcome this, and actually how to implement what has been the plan now until grid will be reinforced.
Yeah. Peter.
Now, may I add to what you say, because it's really an integration issue, but it goes even beyond the levels of technology. What I see, it's the market is changing, the regulation is changing, the technology is providing new solutions. I think the market, regulation, and technology are very strongly intertwined. So looking into good propositions, you really have to address also what is happening in legislation, what is happening in market. And there is, for some of the things, I think the technology is there, but it's only legal barriers or resistance from existing market parties, which blocks the transition.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe one thing to add. We also see that a lot of customers, they may already have like 3 or 4 locations live. They have their own backend. Like we, for instance, we use Road, but they may have another backend. And then it's also really important to make use of the OCPP proxy that FlexiCharge is using, because then we can still manage the chargers, we can still serve them, but like we can still use the backend that the customer wants. And maybe I had a question to you as well, Peter, because we have ALAD on the EV side. What's the equivalent of ALAD on the battery side?
Good question.
I'm a modbus.
Exactly. Where's OCPP?
Ask Bart de Brij. Maybe he can give the answer. And if there is no one there, well, somebody should set up something like that.
But I can say something to it, and I know that with the newer versions of OCPP 2.01, and even now they are doing 2.1. They're actually thinking these things in, so that you can also use OCPP. I'm not actually sure whether it is in particular for batteries, but I know, for example, for local like power meter data or even integration of heat pumps, they are thinking that into OCPP. Whether that is a good solution or not, I can't tell yet. But I know there are people looking into that. But you're completely right, and that has in not only in our industry, that in every industry, this is the biggest challenge: the standardization and intercommunication between systems, and we see that, and I see it as one of the biggest challenges, as Peter also said. I mean, also market integration and all that. That's a challenge.
Yeah, DC networks. I mean, if we could just save from all the power conversions.
and then if you say, what Peter said, what I also found quite interesting at the beginning is this like local for local. I mean, that's sort of concepts of local microgrids. I mean, grid integrated local microgrids which try to optimize energy usage to minimize flow into the transportation layers, but I mean you need these systems, these batteries, these solar panels distributed in a distribution grid. You need to have them communicating somehow in order to provide that, and it can be done. It's all optimization, mathematical optimization. That's all fine, but the technical communication layer underneath it, and as I said, this brokerage between the system, that's a big challenge.
If we transform from the world of A to the world of B, and we transform from one centralized system to a system of systems, a system of decentralized systems, where local balancing become an important play. And of course, if you then go for local, that means that it's local for local at real time. Well, you never will meet real time. Yeah. So there the batteries come into place, because I see examples in the Netherlands where the simultaneously will be 70%, but you increase it when you put a battery to the scheme.
Yeah, maybe if I could add like a last point, like I also see it like on the human side, like personnel, because heavy energy and assets, electronics, telecom, and IT have been separate worlds until now. And now suddenly you need to implement an entire system that makes use of all these three. And it's really hard to find people who have the total picture of these three worlds coming together.
Fully agree.
Yeah.
And then it's important because before I entered in the energy sector, I worked for 23 in the telecom sector. When you start with a digitalized future energy system, then to manage the interdependence between the telecom networks and the energy network, because we don't want that the energy network will go down because the telecoms network is hacked, and we don't want to get the telecom network to get down because somebody hacked the energy network.
Yeah.
I have a question to Bart. Just curious. This use it or lose it. I've heard that many times in the Netherlands, also from others. But is that actually a selling point for charging infrastructure? I mean, if you have a building and you only use like 60% of the maybe 50 years old grid connection, I mean that must be a selling point to then say, okay, put a public charging infrastructure there and use the other 40%, use dynamic load balancing, to balance out the building. Is that something you see people are doing, or is that?
Yeah. Gentlemen, you have 10 seconds to answer.
Okay.
We need to wrap up.
Yes.
Okay.
It's luckily we're not flooded by questions because I think it's been so thorough, but we're going to have to wrap it up. Thank you very much for joining. I think this calls for a follow-up in some months because the market is so dynamic. Regulatory and technology and market needs to work hand in hand. We can see that. Luckily, there are some solutions, but we need to continue that discussion in a few months. I'd love to have you again in this panel. So thank you very much for joining and have a very nice day, all of you. Thank you. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 11 of the ChargePoint podcast. I hope you found today's discussion as insightful and inspiring as I did. Our panelists share some truly valuable perspective on the critical issue of grid congestion in the Netherlands and how it's shaping the future of EV charging infrastructure. Here are a few key takeaways. Peter highlighted the importance of proactive congestion management and tools like the GoPax platform to bridge the gap between grid capacity and demand, reminding us that collaboration between DSOs and TSOs and CPOs is essential to ensure system stability. Shores emphasized the role of energy storage as a game changer in bypassing grid limitations, offering scalable and flexible solutions for charging operators. And the business case seemed to get better and better. Bart pointed out that balancing the rapid rollout of high-power charging hubs with the grid constraints requires smarter planning and more adaptive technology that are vendor-agnostic. And finally, Robert Brame demonstrated how advanced vendor-agnostic load and energy management systems like those from FlexiCharge can optimize existing grid connections, ensuring that the rollout of high-power chargers in the Netherlands can continue at its current pace. The discussion also reminded us that while the challenges are significant, so are the opportunities. With innovative technologies and coordinated efforts across the ecosystem, we can address these bottlenecks and accelerate the energy transition. I found particularly interesting the idea of co-location, where companies with different consumption profile could come together and share a grid access point in the Netherlands. Thank you again for listening, and a special thanks again to our expert panel for their contributions. As always, if you have suggestions for future guests in the EV charging or energy space, drop us an email at hello@flexicharge.com. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, the like button, any of those buttons that get our dopamine high. Until next time, I'm Christoph. Keep charging ahead.